Hello and welcome back to South Park Explained on No Bullshit. Today I'm excited to be talking about this year's Christmas special for South Park. And also, I'm a little saddened to say that this is the last episode for the year. But have no fear because as many have been saying and talking about out there, South Park clearly finished this year really strong. Not only was the rest of this season one of the best in this show's history, but also this last episode really sent things off with a bang. Today we get to talk about their take on Christmas. And we even get an appearance from Santa Claus and Jesus Christ himself. In addition, the teen global warming awareness activist Greta Thunberg also gets a mention here, which is pretty fitting too since she did just recently get dubbed Person of the Year by Time magazine, even though really, we all know Greta hasn't actually accomplished very much, if anything. Yes, all this is coming at you today and more, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. Things start off with the triumphant return of the original signature South Park intro sequence and song. This season had featured different spin-off versions of the intro as part of the ongoing jokes about spin-off shows becoming so popular lately. In response to the growing number of shows being made now, specifically ones coming out for the new streaming services that are popping up like Disney Plus, a service which was the focus of last week's episode too. But this week, there's no more spin-offs. We just got regular good old classic South Park, which is back, just the way we like it too. Then when the episode's story starts, we get another classic thing returning to the show early on. Here, Santa Claus returns, giving a speech at a local holiday event leading up to Christmas, which is in a week or so, of course. But although the crowd is excited to see Santa, who's probably the most famous icon surrounding Christmas besides maybe Jesus himself, well, that depends on who you ask, I guess, but here, Santa isn't exactly giving a crowd-pleasing speech. In fact, the mood quickly turns sour as Santa goes on to warn the crowd about drinking and driving. And although Santa is exactly right and people do need to be careful with their drinking, especially around the holidays, but this crowd isn't exactly in the mood or open to hearing this. They're already half in the bag actually, with almost everyone visibly holding drinks at this party event. So naturally, Santa telling them to be careful at this moment is a bit of a buzzkill. In fact, this premise is what leads to the reference of Greta Thunberg right here. Greta is already considered a big buzzkill herself in the real world, always crying and preaching to us about global warming causing some kind of apocalypse or something. So it's natural that the comparison was made here between Greta and what Santa's doing in this episode now. What specifically happens is, as Santa goes into his anti-drinking spiel, one of the turned-off audience members says to himself, "This is like that Greta girl with the global warming," and then he proceeds to yell buzzkill at Santa on stage. And although we're only a minute or so into this episode, we've already gotten one of the greatest moments. And also, this sets up the main premise for the episode that carries on throughout it. Basically, the townspeople of South Park all insist on drinking and driving all the time, and they do it over and over at very comedic and over-the-top levels. This joke is particularly funny though, because it's just so damn relatable too, especially if you or your family drinks often, like how mine does. I've gotten a lot better about driving though. I know better than to drink and drive now, and I know that sleeping it off or getting another ride is always the better option, and it's a necessary option, but many do still take their chances with it in the real world, especially around the holidays when people are gathering more, celebrating, taking off work, vacationing, traveling, going to parties, and doing other Christmas-related end-of-the-year activities. Let's also not forget New Year's is coming up too, which is just about a week after Christmas, and that involves lots of drinking and celebrating as well. So needless to say, this is a very busy time of year, and it can be dangerous too if you're not careful about your drinking and driving, and you also need to watch out for other people drinking and driving. And now, seeing how South Park tackles this issue going forward certainly gets interesting too. For example, immediately after Santa's buzzkill speech, as the people wrap things up and get ready to head home from this event, Butter's dad excitedly shouts, "Let's drive!" as he's holding a beer and everyone else is still drink in hand too. He repeats this "let's drive" line a couple of other times in this episode later, and it just gets funnier and funnier. I don't know what it is exactly, but something about the combination of his excitement to drink and drive mixed with the relevant real-world situations they're getting inspired by, well, if you put that together with how dangerous and tragic things could actually turn out, and well, that's just what makes this all hilarious. I feel like I have to be clear here though and set the record straight before moving forward, since I do tend to spell things out here anyway, so of course, I have to say, neither I nor South Park are saying drinking and driving is good. Of course it's not. It's terrible and no one should be doing it. This is just a good, funny premise for this episode, but it's not something we should look up to or be imitating. It's really meant to teach us not to do this in the end, because we shouldn't, especially in this day and age with smartphones and apps and our ability to get Ubers and Lyft rides being so easy and cheap. There's really no excuses. South Park immediately shows the bad side of this behavior too when we see people start start to get into crashes, get injured, and some even die on their way home that night. This dangerous, intoxicated driving catches up with the townspeople soon too, as at the store the next day, they all discover they can't buy liquor anymore. The whole wine and spirits section of the store is closed off now, with a sign that even says section closed until January 2nd, being held up by this big yellow chain. Obviously, the town and government decided to step in here and try and stop holiday drinking in South Park, since it went so bad before, but the people aren't really ready to learn their lesson. They're pissed and they immediately start looking for ways to get drunk and inebriated anyway. First, they try and go to another liquor store close by, but it's getting shut down currently too. And when they ask the guy who works there if he has anything he could give them to drink, he responds with one of my favorite lines of this show. He says all he has is this little bottle of schnapps, and it's barely enough for him to drive home. I just love the way he and others have this super casual way of talking about drinking and driving, and they just say it so naturally and like it's this given thing. They almost seem like they need to drink and drive. This also plays into the dark humor side of this joke too, showing how this casual carelessness and reckless behavior can seem funny here because it's joking about something that could go so wrong and be so serious in real life. Then after the townspeople give up and seem genuinely sad and upset, well, things lead back to the mayor, who decides to try and think of another way to get her town into a good mood. And this is what leads the show back to a place I had actually thought we were done seeing this year. The mayor leads some people back to Tegrity Farms, where they beg Randy Marsh to help them get back into the holiday spirit by selling them some of his infamous green plant that he's known for. Randy says he can't though, since his season ended weeks ago. This of course is a bit of a meta reference here, since not only did his farm's harvesting season end weeks ago, but also the sort of South Park spin-off called Tegrity Farms, it supposedly ended a few weeks ago too, but now it looks like it's coming back for one last gasp, one more Christmas special, as Randy is now tasked with saving Christmas in South Park. He still doesn't have any green plants growing though, as the snow and the cold has stopped his harvesting season, so he won't be able to grow any new plants, the ones that make people happy and often hungry. So South Park isn't going to get any munchies just yet, because Randy is still finding out a way to get them some more of his products. And well, things get even crazier in town next, because Randy does come up with a new product that is very special, like what he'd hoped for. After thinking long and hard, Randy decides that since he can't grow anything new, he's going to take some of his old products and spice it up a little bit. And then he ends up creating a new product line called Christmas Snow. And if you're an adult who's familiar just a little bit, you could probably guess what this is going to be. Christmas Snow is also the name of this episode actually, but the snow part has a classic South Park double meaning. Basically, Randy took some of his older leftover green plants and he dipped them and covered them in another white plant that looks kind of like snow, but if you sniff it up, you'll get hotter than Hades. You also might lose your appetite on this one. Your teeth could even grind a little bit too, but in the end, you'll end up feeling like $1,000,000. And this good mood quickly spreads to the people of South Park too, as they all immediately buy and try Randy's new Christmas Snow product, and then they immediately want to go driving again, because of course they do. This party doesn't last long though, as the mayor quickly returns to Tegrity Farms, telling Randy we have another problem. She asked what the special new ingredient in his Christmas Snow is, which results in Randy openly admitting it's that white plant we were talking about. But Randy doesn't realize the obvious until the mayor yells at him for it, saying those plants are still illegal. Randy responds first saying he didn't know, which I think is honestly true, and then second he says, well, we've been through all of this before. Randy says give him 1 minute and he'll fix this just like last time. This turns into a quick montage where Randy goes across the country and to the government trying to convince people to legalize white plants, just like how he recently did with the green ones. It's a pretty damn funny sequence too, where we see Randy doing all sorts of things like getting signatures on petitions. He goes and starts a little protest too, and even he has a big speech and pitch to Congress about it. There's even a funny shot right here where Randy is on stage at some kind of rally with a sign behind him that says the war on drugs is racist. This of course is a common liberal claim used to help legalize green plants, but now Randy's showing the same strategy could work with the white ones. This is also a good time to talk about the whole legality of controlled substances overall. This comes up more later too, but basically South Park is kind of putting alcohol in the same ballpark as green and white plants. All three of these substances are strikingly similar in many ways too. All will get you intoxicated and you really shouldn't be driving or operating any machinery on any of them. But for some reason, drinks are still legal and hardly frowned upon in comparison, because at the same time, while green is somewhere in the middle there, the white stuff is still highly stigmatized, as it probably should be though. It is harsher. And if you keep all this in mind and remember how South Park just banned alcohol at the beginning of this episode, and now Randy Randy is trying to legalize something else, and well, we can clearly see this show is drug focused, and South Park is discussing things in a nuanced yet over-the-top way, which will make you think about it a lot differently in the end, as is a usual setup and premise for the show, especially in these later seasons. There's lots of real thinker stuff like this. Next, Randy's plan works quickly, and he comes back to his farm to tell the mayor that white stuff is legal now, acting as if it was really easy to pull off and it was only a matter of time. Then Randy has a great line where he says, "It's 2019, dog." And then we move on to the third act of the show. Next, we get a quick but funny and relevant scene where Butters is sitting on Santa's lap, but Butters can't think of what to ask Santa for Christmas. So Santa suggests he get a baby Yoda doll. Butters says no though, because although he thought the new Star Wars Mandalorian show where that character's from was good in the beginning, he now says the later episodes fizzled out. And not only is that a common take on the Mandalorian show now, but also Santa referencing the baby Yoda toys is pretty relevant too, since there's been a lot of talk and drama about those as well. People have long been wanting baby Yoda toys, but Disney took a little too long to get them out there, and some weren't impressed by the first offerings, which looked kind of cheap. Drama like that is probably a big part of the reason it gets brought up in this South Park episode here, albeit it was brought up in a sort of short throwaway line kind of way. Santa and Butters quickly get interrupted though when another car crashes near them. This greatly angers Santa, who at first can't figure out how people are still drinking and driving with the new law about stores not being able to sell drinks. The townspeople quickly tell him about the Christmas snow product that Randy was getting for them, and it's making them all jolly, so to speak. This prompts Santa to storm off, promising to fix this once and for all. This eventually results in Randy Marsh seeing that his store and farm now have one of those yellow chains and signs that closed off the liquor aisles earlier in the episode. Now apparently Santa went and got the green plant illegalized for the holidays too, but I guess he didn't realize the white plant was made legal now as well. So this new revelation results in Randy just giving up on the green stuff, and now he's going to double down and sell all white. This leads to a pretty hilarious new commercial Randy makes, advertising his new green-free Christmas snow as he calls it. There's a cool voiceover here too, and some hilarious B-roll shots of real people celebrating the holidays, which was all a good touch. Santa's not ready to give up on this though. He ends up going all over town that night, sneaking into everyone's houses and taking away all of their Christmas snow in secret. This sequence has a catchy song in the background too that's pretty old school, and this whole montage is a stylized way to mimic The Grinch, a classic Dr. Seuss holiday-themed book and cartoon movie. But as Santa is making his getaway, Randy shows up chasing him in a snowmobile. This action-themed section ends quickly though, as both Santa and Randy fly off the side of a cliff. Then we get to one final dramatic twist when Randy finally talks Santa into actually trying his Christmas snow product for once. Santa railed against it, operating on common assumptions about drugs and white stuff, but when he actually tries it himself, he realizes Randy really made some really good stuff. Randy goes on to talk about how he grew the plants himself, all naturally, and this stuff comes straight from his local farm, straight from the plant, without being mixed with anything either, which is often what happens when you buy this kind of stuff off the street. Santa even likes it so much, he does some more, going on about how it's really clean, even saying, "Santa likey." Here, Santa even admits that he was being a little old-fashioned with his thinking about things. This ending revelation does prompt the return of another classic South Park character too, and the other major Christmas icon in the world, which we mentioned earlier. Here, Jesus Christ shows up, now protesting the Christmas snow himself, but Jesus quickly comes around too, because after Santa convinces him to try it as well, Jesus can also see Randy was right all along. White drugs can be good, and they get a badder rap than they probably should. Sure, it's much more serious and a harder drug, but the points they make here are undeniable. Getting homegrown snow, which cuts out the middlemen like dealers and drug cartels from South America, well, that gets rid of all the danger and all of the impurities behind this kind of thing. Not saying I'm all for this or promoting it or anything, of course not, but the way South Park makes these comparisons between white plants, green ones, and back to alcohol, it all makes a lot of sense because, of course, they're exactly right as always. The final shot results in Jesus and Santa and Randy finally returning to town, and thus ending this season with another hilarious holiday special done right. And this thing went pretty crazy too, and stayed extremely relevant while they did it. I mean, who would have thought we were going to see Jesus and Santa snorting up Christmas snow in a South Park episode this year? Hilarious. What do you guys think? Did you enjoy this new episode? And what were your thoughts on season 23 for South Park overall? I know I loved it and I think it's one of their best, but tell me what you guys think by commenting below this video. And if you like what you saw, make sure you hit that like button too. And until next time, Merry Christmas everybody. Have a good one.